At 2:31 in the morning, a 19-year-old college student was still on the phone with his parents. He had driven off a rural road somewhere in western Minnesota. His car was stuck in a ditch. He thought he knew where he was. He did not. His parents had left home to find him. They drove through the darkness, scanning gravel roads and fields. Brandon stayed on the line, trying to guide them. For nearly 47 minutes, they could hear him walking. He told them he was crossing fields, climbing fences. He could hear running water nearby. Then Brandon suddenly reacted to something. According to his parents, he uttered an expletive. And then the call went silent. No scream, no explanation, no second call. By daylight, his car would be found abandoned in a ditch near Taunton, Minnesota. The doors were open. His keys were gone. But Brandon Swanson was nowhere around it. More than 17 years later, there is still no confirmed answer to what happened after that final moment on the phone. This is the disappearance of Brandon Swanson. Brandon Victor Swanson was 19 years old. He lived in Marshall, Minnesota, a small city surrounded by flat farmland, quiet highways, and long stretches of open sky. In May 2008, he had been spending time with friends in Canby, about 30 miles away. It was the kind of place where people knew the roads by memory, where a single porch light could stand out across an empty field, where a wrong turn after midnight could put you miles from the town you thought you were near. On the night Brandon disappeared, there was no indication that he intended to vanish. He was trying to get home. But rural roads can be deceptive in the dark. Gravel roads cross county lines. Fields look identical. Distance is hard to judge. And without a clear landmark, a person can be deeply lost without realizing it. That is what made the next few hours so devastating. Brandon was close enough to speak to his parents, but too far away for them to find him. In the early hours of May 14th, 2008, Brandon was driving home from Canby toward Marshall. At 1:54 a.m., he called his parents, Brian and Annette Swanson. His Chevrolet Lumina had become stuck in a ditch on a rural gravel road. Brandon asked them to come pick him up. He believed he was near the town of Lind. His parents got into their vehicle and began driving toward Lind. Brandon stayed on the phone with them as they searched. At first, the plan sounded simple. Brandon would wait by the car. His parents would reach him. They would pull him out or bring him home. But they could not find him. They drove through the area Brandon described. They flashed their headlights. They looked for the glow of his lights in the distance. Nothing. Brandon could not see them either. Eventually, he decided to leave the car and walk. The phone connection remained open. The conversation continued as he crossed the countryside in the dark. He told his parents he was cutting through fields to save time. He said he had climbed over fences. At different points, he mentioned hearing running water. The details seemed small at the time. Later, they became the only map anyone had. Brandon believed he was walking toward help. He may have been walking in the wrong direction. Cell phone information would later reveal that he wasn't near Lind at all. He was miles away from the place where his parents had been searching. For 47 minutes, father and son stayed connected by a phone line. Near the end of the call, Brandon suddenly said something that sounded like an alarmed expletive. The line went quiet. His parents waited. They called back. There was no answer. They tried again. Still nothing. The person they had been speaking to only seconds before had disappeared into the darkness. As morning arrived, Brandon's parents reported him missing. The search began in and around Lind, because that was where Brandon believed he was. But the early search was focused on the wrong place. Later that day, investigators obtained information from Brandon's cell phone that pointed them toward the Taunton area. There, on Lincoln Lyon Road near Taunton, they found his Chevrolet Lumina. The car was abandoned in a ditch. The official FBI notice says its doors were open and the keys were missing. There was no sign of Brandon nearby. No clear trail showed the direction he had taken. The discovery changed the entire case. Brandon had not simply been stranded near a town where he could easily be found. He had been alone in a vast rural area, surrounded by fields, drainage ditches, and waterways. And by the time investigators knew where to look, hours had passed. The phone call had ended, the night was over, and the empty car was the last solid point in Brandon's path. Search teams faced a problem that grew larger with every hour. They knew where Brandon's car had been found. They knew he had been walking and speaking by phone. They knew he had mentioned fences and the sound of running water. But they didn't know which direction he had taken after leaving the road. The landscape offered almost no easy answers. The Yellow Medicine River and nearby waterways became important areas of interest. Searchers used ground teams, volunteers, aircraft, water searches, and trained dogs. Over the years, the search area expanded dramatically. Officials later described it as roughly 122 square miles. That is a huge place to search when the last known movement happened at night, on foot, across private farmland. Investigators considered the possibility that Brandon had entered the Yellow Medicine River. Some search activity focused on that idea because of the water he mentioned during the call, but no conclusion was ever established. The river was searched repeatedly. Fields were searched after harvest. Search dogs were brought back. Teams returned again and again. And still, there was no confirmed trace. The case remains open. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension still lists Brandon as a missing person. The FBI also continues to publish a VICAP notice asking for information. For the people who searched, the difficulty was not a lack of effort. It was the uncertainty. One direction could lead to a field, another to a riverbank, another to miles of roads, creeks, and private land. And somewhere beyond that abandoned car was a path Brandon took only once. The most discussed possibility is an accident. Brandon may have encountered water in the darkness. He may have fallen, become disoriented, or been unable to find his way back out of the rural landscape. But that remains a theory. Investigators have never publicly confirmed that he drowned. They have also said there is no evidence establishing foul play. That leaves the case suspended between possibilities. What caused Brandon's final reaction? Did he stumble into a ditch, a creek, or the river? Did he see something unexpected? Did he lose his phone and continue walking? Or did something happen after the call that no one else witnessed? The final words are often treated as the center of the mystery, but they are also dangerously easy to overinterpret. A startled expletive can mean many things in the dark. A fall, a sudden obstacle, cold water, a broken fence line, an animal, or simple surprise. It does not prove an attack. It does not prove a drowning. It only proves that, in one brief second, something changed. The larger mystery is not just why the call ended. It is why nothing has been found after it. There have been leads. There have been searches. There have been theories. But no physical evidence has given Brandon's family a final answer. Brandon Swanson's disappearance also left a different kind of legacy. After his case, Minnesota passed what became known as Brandon's Law. The law requires police to accept missing person reports without delay and conduct a preliminary investigation to determine whether the person is missing or endangered, regardless of age. It cannot explain what happened on that night in 2008. It cannot bring Brandon home. But it means that another family facing the same terrifying silence may receive help sooner. Somewhere in rural Minnesota, there is still an abandoned moment that has never been explained. A young man walking through fields in the dark, a phone call connecting him to the people trying to find him, and then nothing. For 47 minutes, Brandon Swanson was not alone. Then the line went silent, and he was never seen again.